and we will get underway with our business. So first order of business is we have the minutes from our previous meeting that were distributed via email to all the committee members. So could I have a motion to approve the minutes
So moved.
and a second?
Second?
Right, second, okay. Any additions, corrections to the minutes? Okay, so all in favor of accepting the minutes as written?
Aye.
I have
And,
to abstain.
okay,
Abstain. Yeah, buddy.
and any opposed? Okay, one abstention.
Two.
Two, thank you. I was looking on our website, I couldn't find where you find minutes. I could find where you find agendas,
It's
but,
right there.
It's right there.
It's right there with the agendas.
so it's right there. So I saw the agenda, and I could click on an agenda, but where
It
do,
should say agenda and minutes.
yeah, yeah.
So just click on that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I get to the agenda center. I
Okay.
can't find, the minute things were not
Right, well,
showing
you
up.
you go down the list to historical, to CPC,
Yeah,
and then on the right, you'll see it checked off.
all right,
And then you click on that
okay.
for the minutes.
I saw the agenda, I didn't see the minutes, but I will go back
Okay.
and see.
Okay. Or if you
Uh,
want to call me, I can walk you through it.
Okay, then maybe I just need to keep going to the right or something.
Yeah.
It's probably there. Okay, great, thank you. We have some invoices today.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We actually only have one. I do have Attorney Savastano's,
Mhm.
and I did ask him this morning to give me an update with the times.
Yeah.
But he did not get back to me, so I don't know if you want this to be signed.
Okay, maybe we can do a subject to kind of motion on that.
Okay.
But the first is invoice in the amount
There's
of,
two.
there's two here?
Together, yeah.
Okay. So we have two invoices clipped here. One is the amount of $282.86, and that is for installation of the kiosks. And this is for the actual installation aspect of them, related to the historic trail. So this is like literally the concrete and stuff to set these kiosks. And there's a picture of them being set. And they ended up upright, which is always a good thing. Okay. Is there another invoice in here?
Yes, it should be,
I think this is
it's
all,
for the officer that they had to hire to install the kiosks, because it was the vote kids that were doing it, and vote insisted on it. So it should be in there.
this is,
If you take the paper clip off, but I
Yeah.
have them stapled.
oh, okay. Yeah, that
There
piece.
you go. There you go.
Okay, there we go. There's the other piece. And this is for the detail, I believe, right?
Correct.
Okay. Which is the $204. So in this voucher, there's the invoice for $78.86 for installation of the kiosks and $204 for the detail. And the total is the $282.86. So pass that along and take a look at that. Margaret, they went right past you. You okay?
That's okay.
Okay, sorry.
I'll see it on the way back.
You will. Okay. And then Mr. Savastano's invoice,
Right.
amount of $357.50. And these are for conversations related to clearing up the issue for the Russell Mills Conservation Land, conservation restriction. And this is the issue that the EEA had raised concerns about how the warrant for this funding was written, and Savastano's office had then in discussions to work out how to move forward. There is no time written. Usually Mr. Savastano will write in the time, so it's just the charges, and I know the committee, and I had asked him to write in the time. So I would ask that if we had a motion that was to approve, subject to receiving the breakdown of time.
Make a motion that we approve the bill, subject to receiving a breakdown of time, and request that all other bills and invoices have time posted on it accordingly.
In a second?
Second.
Okay, any other discussion?
I'd like to discuss.
Yes.
We have asked Mr. Sapastano to do that several times. So now we're just gonna pay it, subject to, but I think if he doesn't put the times down, we shouldn't pay it. That's my
Well, that's
opinion.
the subject to part.
No, I
So-
know, I
So
know,
if
but I'm
no
just
time,
discussing.
then it's not, we're not
Well, I
gonna
know,
pay
but the
it.
next time, it should be the same thing, if he doesn't.
Correct, I see,
Just won't pay it again. I mean, Yeah. it's,
yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty small bill. It's less than 2 hours, so I mean, you could divide 5 tasks into 2 hours, not that many different ways, so it's
But
kind of,
that's-
it's a small potato.
I know, but
I get
it's-
what you're saying, it's,
Yeah.
That's not the point.
no, it's,
That's not the principle, let me put it that way.
right, yeah. But learning the times is not gonna be very interesting this time around.
Okay. So, all in favor of approving Mr. Savastano's invoice payment, subject to receiving the breakdown of time for the invoice?
Aye.
aye.
And opposed?
No, I said no.
Oh, you did say aye?
Yeah,
Okay.
because this time, but
I don't want to lead you on in your vote.
you wouldn't leave me
Okay.
on. but
All right, thank you. Good.
you should know
I
that
missed
by
the,
now.
yes, I do. I would be surprised.
That's the new style voucher.
And if we have a motion,
Style depends on how
a motion on the 2 invoices for the Heritage Trail.
Motion to pay the 2 invoices for the Heritage Trail project.
Sign that, we gotta sign.
Second.
It's just a different one.
Any discussion on that?
I like the
Alright.
pictures.
All in favor, approval as submitted? Okay.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous, thank you. Correspondence, any other invoice or correspondence? No, okay. I did receive an email, and you all may be on the distribution list from the coalition, that the Department of Revenue has announced that the state match for this year is 21%. And so that's probably about 10-15% lower than what we typically are expecting. Again, state revenues being down, and I believe the legislature did not choose to distribute any surplus. So I will update our kind of budget projections, and so in January, we'll take a look at that to see what that means for our funds. And also had received from Donna Fernandez the summary of the case study summary for the assessment and recommendations regarding the seawall at Apponeganset. And I had some questions for Donna, and Chris is probably, I had a couple of questions I forgot to email you with them, so just to understand what the report is, and so we'll, once I kind of have those answers, I'm going to forward what she gave me so you can see that, but I think it'll put it in, I just need to understand the context of that report, and that's all we have for correspondence. Great. So we do have at this time, I want to step into a public hearing time to hear comments on our annual needs assessment and plan for 2025. And what we did was distribute the 2024 plan, goals and strategies, and ask people to comment on that. So if I could have.
Motion to recess the regular meeting and go into a public hearing.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion, questions about that? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, just some ground rules for us that typically how we do this is we ask for folks who are present, if there's any comment on any aspect of the plan that we have, so that we could consider perhaps adding to or amending or revising our plan for the coming fiscal year, to be fiscal '25, beginning July 1st, 2024. And if we've received any correspondence related to our plan, this was distributed to boards and commissions in the town, as well as people who have used our resources before, such as DNRT. And the people were directed to send anything written to our inbox. And I think Michelle took a peek, and we have no responses.
No.
Okay. So if there are people present here who would like to comment on any of our uses, our goals around housing, historic preservation, open space, and recreation, agricultural preservation, I invite you to give us some comments on sort of what are the big priorities we should be concerned about. Are there any responses and thoughts about our current strategies that we've kind of published in terms of what we would support? And if you come up here to the microphone and let us know who you are for the audience.
Hi, I'm Kevin Murphy with the Waterways Commission. Pretty familiar with all of you here. It was discussed at our last meeting that perhaps we could submit another grant request to the Seaport Economic Council. As you may be aware, that council meets every 6 months to award grants to the various seaport communities in the town. Dartmouth has 5 grants from Seaport Economic Council in motion right now. The town, we did not submit anything for the past November round, but looking ahead into the May round, Waterways is considered requesting a small amount from Seaport Economic Council, maybe $45,000 to $60,000. The numbers haven't been worked up yet. It's always a good idea when submitting a Seaport Economic Council grant that you have the co-pays lined up. And so that in an effort to try to stay ahead of this, we'd like to put a 20% copay on the grounds to get a copay from the Seaport from the CPC regarding the renovation or rebuilding, maintaining of the dinghy racks that are over at the Dias Landing. If you've driven by that area over the last couple of years, you've seen racks that have the big black hoops on them. Those are renovations that we did a couple of years ago in an effort to get through the wooden ones that are long beyond their service. And in an effort to expedite that process, it would be helpful to get a small grant for Seaport Economic Council. A couple of years, the council granted $60,000 to the town of Westport refurbish the electrical on the town wharf down there, so this is kind of a similar nature, and I would expect that grant, should an application be sent by the town, with an assurance that maybe the copay is already available, I think that request would look very favorable to the town getting the grant.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about that a little bit and have a chance for questions a little bit later in this agenda. Yeah.
Okay, yes, so,
Here, if there's just.
Okay, so
This
the-
aspect, if there's particularly just around our plans and our approach
Okay.
to, and. there
so
may
I
be-
guess the dinghy racks would be the reason to fall under recreation,
Yeah.
to kind of refurbish what's already in effect in the town, and I would hope that you consider that this would fall under your purview to submit the further applications necessary to move the project forward. Anybody have any questions, or?
Oh, yeah, Mike.
Buddy, do you want us to hold off about questions about this
Right.
until we
Right.
get to
We'll
that
talk
on the agenda?
specifically about the
Okay.
dinghy thing
Sounds good.
a little bit later in this agenda.
Okay.
But certainly, so part of kind of my translation for here, at talking about our plan, is certainly there are aspects around our harbor that are recreational.
Right.
And I kind of, that we need to be aware of and think of. When we think of recreation, we typically will think of parks and recreation, makes a whole lot of sense. But our harbor is very much a recreational
Sure.
harbor. More so than, say, a working harbor like the New Bedford waterfront,
Yep.
for instance. And so,
These racks are all part of the
Yeah.
recreation
Yeah.
aspect.
yeah.
Okay,
Okay, great, thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, anyone else like to, yes?
My name's Fred Dabney. I'm a member of the Ag Commission. And we had a few questions relating to, I guess it's a lot of the ways that CPC operates, and it may be that we're just not familiar with some of the ways that you work. One of the questions we've had on your priorities, you state that preserving ag land that is deemed viable is an important part of your prioritization. And we were wondering if you had an inventory of viable ag land.
No, we do not.
Okay, it's something that we're working on in the Ag Commission, and we'd like to make sure that's something that you are all aware of, because it's diminishing rapidly, and we hope that we can still preserve some of it. Does CPC support multiple uses? And it seems like there low-income housing, ag land preservation, and multiple eligible use as well as historic preservation are all combined multiple uses. Is that a consideration when you're determining priorities? I mean, the fact that they overlap so much makes it a little more challenging to determine where you can take money from.
I don't know, anyone want to speak to that? I know, John, sometimes you think, when some positively about projects that serve more than,
Yeah, and I think we can draw from multiple
correct.
folders, we could, we don't have to limit to it to say it's purely open space. We can say if there's an affordable house component to it, we can draw money from the affordable housing folder. So we're not limited on a project if there are multiple things happening with.
You can draw from different funds to feed that.
Am I correct, buddy? Am I speaking out of turn with that?
Yeah, sure.
So, and certainly that is a case-by-case base.
Of course. Well, I guess that leads me to the next question, which is, you have some, is it reserve funds? No, it's, I can't remember the terminology now. So can you help me that there's extra money set aside in the event of unrestricted, which is not part of the budget? Can that be used if there's an application for use of the money specifically
We
to
can use
apply
it
for your?
For any of the categories.
Yeah.
And so that can be in addition to whatever the
Correct.
allocation is. Okay, well, an ag historical preservation is another one. Is there an inventory of such a thing as the historical ag preservation?
No.
Another
Not
question
aware
that
of, right.
would be,
You mean like historical farms properties?
right,
Like not, we've mostly thought about buildings as historic. I'm not sure what the act speaks to.
well, it sort of overlaps into that area of historic preservation as well as ag land preservation, because the farms in Dartmouth,
Right.
there are some of them that are,
Very old.
been around for a long time, and they would qualify, I would think, for that category as well.
I don't, in my time here, I don't think we've had an application to preserve historic property.
No, I think that the closest we've come to that, and it wasn't an agricultural, was the DNRT, when DNRT acquired the Health Fan farm.
Yeah, hopefully,
We actually have used CPA funds for historic preservation of the building that they use for their office. It was kind of the exterior work that I think we drew the line on the exterior, and we didn't use any public funds on any of their interior kind of use. But,
Did we do something with the foundation on the walking trails up on Smith Neck Road? Wasn't there something out there a while back? So there was a old house or a foundation of an old house, they were by the bridge,
right, I don't recall that.
something like that. Yeah, I know there was something there that we did. It was,
I was just gonna say, the current priorities under historic preservation we have stated in here, support DHC in the research and documentation of the town's historic properties, cultural landscapes, and sites. So it seems
Yeah.
kind of broad that you can.
Yeah. Which is an interesting question for us.
You also, I think.
But
that
you have to
there's-
come up to the microphone.
I believe there were CPC funds utilized for the Gidley Bridge, and that would have been a historical project on a farm, because it's part of the Gidley farm, so. I just couldn't remember whether or not there had been a contribution from CPA.
There probably are ways to think about how those things combine, and we have both our restricted funds we can tap, as well as unrestricted we can use anywhere, and our strategy typically has been to keep the unrestricted fund as large as possible, because it gives us, as a committee, the most flexibility to support projects. The one thing that we tried, and really it was not a good experience, was combining, and this was with the, what is it?
Affordable housing and,
Yeah, what is
Farming.
that farm escaped me, so controversial.
Schofield.
Thank you, Schofield.
Schofield.
Was, and we had at the time the thought of, there was a house, could it be done as a package deal? You have the preserved land to farm, and then the house would be offered as an affordable housing. And that did not work, that would prove to be difficult and problematic in all kinds of ways. The house part,
yeah.
There's all
there
kinds
was
of
certainly
details that made it
a lot of lessons learned there, and I would not shy away from another deal like that, but I would certainly make sure we dot our i's and cross our t's,
The other
cross our
the other
t's.
property
and
was Dyke Creek.
Do it much differently if we do
Yes.
it at all, you know, certainly I think we would have to entertain it, but, I think we all would approach it, those of us who experience this would approach it much differently.
yeah, and I think if, that's something that if the Ag Commission at some point had thoughts about that, you know, I think it was conceptually, it just was a really attractive idea, that, you know, the housing could be affordable, you know, and you can, and the family or person could get into farming, and that would be a nice package. The housing turned out to be an albatross, and then,
The farming
you know, there are other complications with that, just that particular site. So it would be interesting if you all had thoughts about, you know, how affordable housing and agricultural land preservation can come together to support someone trying to get into farming. Because I think as we do approach, if there's another thought or another possibility for that, we would want to do it differently, and we probably need to think through like how to do it better the next time.
And we actually worked through some of those issues through the Ag Preservation Trust Fund Council. And for one of those properties, we put a restriction on the size of the house. There was a 2,500 square foot, that was the max. And we also tied the farmhouse lot to the overall farm property, which was another strategy. And I think we've also talked about possibly going back to the planning board and asking that when we do protect a farm property, that instead of using a 2-acre house lot,
yeah.
we need to reduce that so that more of the land is available for cultivation versus being part of the, like, what they're calling an infrastructure lot. Not that that isn't necessary, but it doesn't need to be 2 acres.
Is it 2 acres because of the zoning, Sue?
Yes.
Oh, only because of the zoning?
Correct,
Oh, okay.
correct. So, in other words, I don't know how many of you recall the Ryder Farm, but that was a total of, I think, 19 acres. So when you take 2 acres out,
A lot.
that's a lot. That only leaves you with, 17, and all 17 of it, of course, isn't tillable, so.
So what do you think is a good size for that? In other words, what would you say, an acre, 25,000 feet for the house? And what would you think? I'm just curious, because if you come before planning, I'd like to know what you think is 30,000 square feet, maybe?
Well, I mean, when we did the 2,500 square
Uh-huh.
feet, that was the size of the footprint of the house.
House, right.
Right, but if, as far as the house lot is
Right,
concerned.
the house lot, that's what I'm asking you.
I mean, I don't know, I think that an acre is adequate, and then if a farmer needs additional space for a building that they're gonna use for processing or equipment storage or whatever it be, I mean, they're not gonna set it on the best soils on the farm, so it's gonna have to be in another location on the property.
So you're thinking the other location would be the house lot?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, it'd be good if the trust had put any of that thinking down in writing. That would be great to share with us and at least to know that you all could be consulted with if we were really looking at the possibility of how to accomplish that.
That's sort of part of the question I've raised before about the interaction between the Ag Commission and CPC.
Yeah.
I think the more we can contribute to what your plans are, the better we can work, the results will be. I think because we mentioned some areas that you don't have inventories of, we'd like to work with you in determining
Yeah.
some of those questions that Sue's just presented.
Yeah, and you just reminded me, that's a piece of correspondence I was remiss, and so when we get back to our regular agenda, I will catch up on that. As soon as I'm like, oh, right, I didn't
And
update folks.
on another note, when Fred had mentioned the viability, farm viability, a lot of that work was done in the documents that were created to be utilized by the Ag Preservation Trust Fund. And I actually asked Michelle to copy what we have. I don't have it
Yeah.
in digital form, but now you have it at least in hard copy. And if you need to get it into, digital form, it'll be easier now than, when we're operating.
Yeah, so, and so, this just got dropped off to us, the Agricultural Preservation Trust Council of Dartmouth criteria for evaluation of farmland for the purchase of development rights. And so what I'm wondering is this a document? Because one of the things that we have thought about post a lot of the Schofield kind of issues as we were discussing them, was how to better account for kind of the viability of kind of an agricultural preservation project. Then, because I think part of an issue related to that particular site was also poor soil. And so.
Allegedly,
Yes, allegedly. Poor
surrounded by working farms for 200 years.
Yes,
so
allegedly poor
That
soil.
was allegedly.
But yes, thank you. But it did kind of remind us that, we don't have in our submission criteria, if someone was looking for, a proposal to preserve agricultural land, we don't really ask or look at any information that might indicate that that's viable, right? And if we're gonna spend, support a project like that, obviously viability is a key thing. So is there an inventory we might wanna reference in our plan? Because our plan references documents that have been established in the town, mostly planning documents, like the harbor management plan or housing production plan. Is there something we ought to be referencing about soil viability? Is there an
Well,
inventory?
that's all part of the
Okay.
criteria in this
Yeah.
document. Now, in all honesty, the AgCom really needs to review this again,
Yeah.
because it's been some time since we've actually even put it to use.
Mm-hmm.
But we are gonna be working on, as Fred said, prioritization. In fact, we're gonna be doing it with Mike O'Reilly, because he had done it. I think the last one we did was 2015, and we need to go back because a lot of those properties have since come off the list, and we need to reprioritize.
The other point has been that in the past, soils of importance were one of the most important considerations in determining whether it was viable farmland. And now, the feds have allowed for soils of local importance to be added to that list. And that has added a significant amount of potential acreage for consideration.
And I know we've had these discussions about the soil quality and what it could be used for, but it's really about the person who applies to farm that land, because although it may not have been ideal for like row crops, there are many that have said that it would have worked for raising pigs, for example. But if a person comes forward and then says, well, I don't want to raise pigs, I mean, I don't know how you address it at that point in time, but that may have been part of the rationale initially, but it didn't work in our favor that last time, so.
Because I'm not, I'm just trying to envision, I don't know how, say, an agricultural preservation proposal, how it could reach us without having gone through a ag trust at some point. I'm just trying to envision, like, who would bring
We
that?
actually worked as a committee
Yeah.
when we vetted Schofield, and at the time, we were working with Matt Thomas, for any of you who
Right.
know
Yeah.
him. And that process, I mean, that included, we had somebody that was a former loan officer with the Farm Service Agency, for example, who was part of that committee. So there were some independent people on that committee, not just farmers or members of the Ag Commission on it.
I wonder if, with historic preservation projects, we defer to the Historic Commission. So for instance, and I think actually by the CPA requirements are that a property is either, on the register for historic properties, or is considered a historically significant site or project or something. And it's the local historical commission that deems that. So when we get historic preservation proposals, one of the things we get is a letter from the historical commission saying this is a significant historic resource or asset in the town. Should we be saying something similar about the Ag Trust, saying that if we have any proposals that come to us for preservation of agricultural land, we would require endorsement by the Ag Trust as part of our approval process for such a proposal. I mean, it may always happen that way anyway, but because we would be, just like we looked at the Historic Commission to say, yeah, we accept, we approve of those renovations or those repairs. We would look to you all maybe saying, yeah, that's a viable, we've evaluated it, and that's a viable proposal. Should we be thinking about being explicit about that?
I mean, I think you would be better to ask for AgCom input, because Ag Preservation Trust, because we have such little money left, that entity really doesn't exist, per se.
Well, who would do this?
AgCom,
Oh, they would do the criteria.
yes.
Oh,
Or
okay.
they could just opt to utilize what we've already created. There's no sense in
Okay, got it.
rewriting it, but.
Okay.
But there's more turnover with AgCom than there is with Ag Preservation Trust. We would have to reconvene a whole entirely new committee, and it's really hard to get people up to speed with agricultural issues when that's not their primary interest or area of expertise.
And then the one, since you all are here, one of the things that also kind of was very helpful to us from our discussions of the Schofield project issues was the whole notion of the cultural landscape. So agricultural preservation, which really was preserving that landscape. And I know with our joint meeting with the Ag Commission, there's some caution about that because farming techniques are changing, and some of those changes due to climate may require changing landscape, growing indoors. And so I think we heard the caution to that, but I think, part of that preservation has really been the landscape, not, and that the farming practice that still is maintained on that land.
Well, that's so important now because, as you just said, the technology has changed the
Yeah.
face of agriculture dramatically. And now, agriculture frequently, European agriculture is very successful, but you don't see much open fields in many areas. It's all greenhouses, either polyethylene or glass. And that is agriculture today, and that's an incredibly important part. That's not quite the traditional landscape that people accept as part of agriculture.
Yeah.
That type of agriculture would be in the Walmart parking lot.
No, because even though
Bring
the
the dirt in.
Europeans are using plastic houses, they're still growing in the ground.
Yeah, I mean,
So they're not gonna cover their soils with concrete, no way, or asphalt for that matter.
because I know that what you're saying, buddy, is that we've had a couple of farms, especially mandating that the grass is mowed, kept in the exact condition that it is, so I think that's what you're getting
Yeah.
at with some of these.
Yeah, we've
historical-
definitely done that with the open space preservation is where, yes, with DNRT kind of
Right,
acquisitions.
because some of them were supposed to stay as farms, I think one was a vineyard, Dyke
Yeah.
Lane, the Dyke.
Dyke Creek.
Dyke Creek project, yeah,
Yeah.
that was one of them that we mandated that it be
Yeah.
cut at a minimum twice a year, I think it was. Not to overgrow the stone walls and anything else.
So it retains the farm look.
Farm look, yeah.
I think it's a good recommendation to add the endorsement of the Ag Commission, you know, if we're gonna, because you're more directly involved with the types of folks that are gonna be doing those types of projects, and to get your endorsement would, I think, would go a long way for us to be able to evaluate a project.
I want to make sure if we do something like that, that it's not a mandate for the board.
It's a recommendation.
A recommendation, because there may be an instance where, you know, we're interested in supporting a farm who the Ag Commission is saying the soils are terrible, but maybe they would do greenhouse in a setting where, you know, you can't see it from the road, and the greenhouse would be raised beds with potting soil. Why do we want to ever prevent that if it's considered agricultural? And at least we're preserving some land that could be converted again if that operation went south. You know, I just don't want it, you know,
You wanna keep the-
bureaucracy, you don't want to
decide.
tie our hands and make it a
Makes sense.
mandate that we get a positive recommendation. We seek recommendations, is what it should be from
Makes
this board.
sense to me.
Yeah.
Agriculture needs your help, because as you know, agriculture is a slowly disappearing industry, and it has been an important part of what's made this entire area an attractive one for so many people. And we need to do all we can to ensure that it doesn't disappear.
Just a final thing, we have not had recently any agricultural preservation kind of proposals. Do you have a sense of on the horizon, is that something we might be seeing?
Yes, and I think that when we go through this exercise of prioritizing
Yeah.
the farms, then that'll start to become a little bit more clear. On the historical side, there was in existence at one time a program called Century Barns. It was promoted by, I believe, Farm Bureau. And they celebrated barns that were 100 years old or older. I can't think off the top of my head if we have any structures like that in town, but what we do have that are becoming less and less are silos. And preserving the silo at Helfin Farm, I thought was pretty critical. We lost one silo on Bakerville Road, but that was up to the DNRT that was on there, on one of their restrictions, so.
Great. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, if you could come up to the,
I forgot to
yeah.
mention that I may have a couple of minutes. I did neglect to mention before that I have some questions regarding the Dias Landing. As we know, costs have escalated quite a bit in the last couple of years. And there's a good chance that the $1 million grant from the Seaport Economic Council, we're going to have to request a 20% increase to that grant to complete the project so that it would be viable, which would require the 20% copay. And I'm just wondering what the vehicle would be to approach CPC to get the additional $40,000 for the grant. How would we make that request, or is it understood? or how would that-
I think it would be a new application.
Okay.
It'll be a kind of a late January deadline, so an
June,
application.
okay, so
and then
we
that-
haven't missed any deadlines
No,
with this?
that would
or
go to
anything?
June
Okay,
town meeting.
so it would
Yeah.
behoove us to get that in, okay.
Yep,
Thank you.
yep, definitely. Chris, if you have any comment on any of our kind of priorities and things we should be kind of paying attention to?
Yeah, good evening, Chris Vitale, Assistant Town Administrator. I'll speak very briefly because I know I just got your email about maybe appearing on the next agenda in January. But when you look at the needs assessment, obviously community housing and affordable housing is a very big component to that. And I know the strategies within the current plan, I think they are appropriate. They're still appropriate. I know our current housing production plan is set to expire at the beginning of next year. And so that's going to be, I think we'll go into more detail at the next meeting on those efforts and what that looks like for future goals and things of that nature. But yeah, no, that's really it on my end.
All right, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any more comments? All right, can I have a motion to close our public hearing?
Motion. Second.
All right, any discussion, questions about that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Great. So we landed back on our regular meeting, parliamentary assistance here. Do we have to, I think we've landed back on our regular agenda. Okay, thank you. All right. I'm wondering, since we have folks here to talk about some other things, if I could have some discretion to bounce us around the agenda. So we'll circle back to what changes we want to make in our plan. But if we could go around to the, talk about the what we call the eligibility consultation requests. And then, I think, Sue, you were here and you're able to speak to the police station. So then we'll talk about the project update. So if we can kind of do the item 6 and 7.
Let's do it.
And then we will drop back to 4 and 5, if folks are fine with that. So, Ms. Murphy, if you talk to us, now we can talk to you about the details of the dinghy, we can do the dinghy details. So we have, I think folks received this description. So you're looking at, say, something like $9,000 that would be used to improve or replace the storage for the dinghy and kayaks. This is the current, where they currently are?
Yes,
That bunch?
yes.
Yeah, okay. So can you say a little bit about that, and then I think
Sure.
people may have questions and stuff.
As I alluded to before, the hoop racks that you're probably familiar with driving by, that those replaced some of the wooden racks. And we just wish to expedite the replacement of the remaining racks in kind of a one-time deal so it would be cost-effective. And they're in need of it. The request, the 9% is probably assuming a $45,000 Seaport Economic Council request. We may be a little less, a little more than that when we do a closer costing. But as I said, there was a similar request by Westport. Seaport has granted these types of things, and I would expect that we'd probably get an affirmation of the grant should it be submitted. This cost also includes the replacement and disposal of the existing racks, so that that's part of the project. Do you have any other questions? We will also change the mix, maybe. You can see that some kayaks are actually down on the ground, on the ramps, and it's kind of an ineffective use of a slot, so we may expand the use of a couple of, 2 or 3 more dinghy, kayak racks as opposed to the dinghy racks. There is a waiting list for these spaces, and expect that would continue. There's a lot of public demand for this, and think it's a viable project, and I think it's something that could be looked favorable upon at a relatively low cost to the town.
Questions? Yeah, Mike?
I have just one question, I
Yes.
guess. So based on the $45,000 estimate that you have, that
Yes.
you're gonna go after, I don't know if that's based on an actual, like, cost assessment yet, but how many racks, I guess, does that
Right, well,
equate to?
we have a history of the racks that we've built. We had a cost last year, and Steve, reviewing this and replacing the certain number, it would come to around $45,000. For me to give you hard numbers right now, I can't, but
Oh, but for how many racks does that equate to? Is that like 12
you would
racks?
probably be looking at another nine rack, 9 by 6, would probably 54 racks, I'm guessing, individual boats. And again, I could stand corrected on that, I don't have the hard numbers with me, but, and the one kayak pod would hold 8 kayaks, so if we replaced 2 dinghy racks with a kayak rack, we would pick up 8 kayaks as opposed to 2. So we could do a better balance of the needs and leave the most openings for the public. Yes, Margaret?
Who constructs, do you have someone who constructs these for you?
Well, we had a
Structure
private
out of wood?
individual
Okay.
who built them before, and admittedly, I delivered some of them. But this project would be a lot wider now. We'd have to go out to bid
Okay.
based on specs, so this is probably not something that we could just hand off, because it's under $10,000, but we'd go out to bid with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, John?
So this was an eligibility request, and I don't see
Yeah.
why this would not be
Right.
eligible.
Right, definitely
So, you know, there's an answer there. It is eligible.
Okay.
Certainly, I would support it, and for $9,000, we'd be submitting the shop form. And I just personally would want to see the details of,
Sure.
you know, how many racks, how big
Yep,
they are.
absolutely, yeah.
And one of the things I'd want to see is.
They look like.
Is it, can anybody in the public
Yes, it's,
can access this? It's
public,
not
that's right,
just,
exactly, right through the waterways.
so I know there's a waiting list, but,
Yep,
you know.
it's all public
I don't have a
access.
boat, I can go down and get my name on a list and
No problem.
reserve a kayak space, yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, so this would be a short form application.
Okay,
That then would go to, if it went through, go through our process, and then the town meeting, June town meeting would be when the decision's made, because town meeting is the one that has the
There is early
authority
June, right.
to
Yeah.
award, so.
Right.
Yeah.
so I guess this would kind of be handed off to Chris next to see if we
Oh,
get
yeah,
an
no,
application in.
he'll
but
be stuck.
At least we
Yeah.
look like we're heading in the right direction here.
Yes, oh,
Okay.
absolutely, yeah, yeah.
Great.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for your time, everybody, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know Ms. Maderas from the Pathways Committee is expected to be here close to 7:30, so she's going to talk about the Greenway consultation request. Let's,
did we get any paperwork in that? I didn't.
yes, we do have a, yeah, do you have an extra copy there?
I don't think you can use it.
Here, take a, here, while we're,
Did it come in email or no?
Yep.
yeah. So, that, yeah.
I can just open my email.
I only got the Dias Landing, I didn't get in the email,
Yeah,
this
Yeah,
one
I
here.
just got Dias Landing too. That's all I got.
okay.
Should we slide down to 7 without her here?
Yeah. So, Sue, if you could speak to us about the police station, former police station, allegedly. No, that was really a former police
It was
station.
a police station.
I drove
That's
by it
right.
on the way here.
Been there for a lot of years.
It wasn't Candyland, that's for
It
sure.
wasn't, it wasn't Candyland.
Oh, okay, so where to begin? I guess you've already, Chris has already spoken to you about it because she had come and requested the $10,000 to do a study. It was called a feasibility study as far as environmental and structural assessments. We brought it to the select board, and it was denied because they didn't want us to use the term feasibility because that would suggest that possibly this building might have another purpose. So they tasked Mr. McGinnis to come back to them with what was called a package, which would have included a scope of work, what exactly that would have looked like. And during our conversation with the select board, we were very clear that we wanted to collaborate with them to see what could be done in terms of if there were potential for this building to be repurposed in some way. And we were told yes. We were looking for this package. We met with them in November. We were told that the package was going to be presented at Monday's meeting. When we got to the meeting, we were told that a firm in Providence had already been contacted to do this work. And they had never included us in any of the communications. As it was, we ended up filing for Freedom of Information Act because no one would explain to us what exactly was communicated to this company by the name of Brewster Thornton, who we understand are architects. It doesn't appear anything that I could find out that they have a environmental or structural side to their business. We've been getting some guidance from two gentlemen that have experience in the affordable housing area, and they gave us the names of two consulting firms. Again, one of them happens to work primarily in Rhode Island, so he could only offer us the names of two companies in Rhode Island that do that kind of thing. So we had intended to also reach out to these consulting firms when the time came, and we were not afforded that opportunity. So, the select board, they took a vote because Brewster Thornton came in with a quote of $46,000. When someone who is a good source of information, who's a former member of the Historical Commission, told us that the study, the environmental, granted it doesn't include the structural, but the environmental assessment should run somewhere between $1,800 and $3,200. That's a far cry from $46,000. Although, when one of the select board members asked Mr. McGinnis, "What do you think this is going to cost?" he said $50,000. And we had heard that in the meeting in November. So they took a vote, and it was 2-2 because there were only 4 of them there for the meeting on Monday. So it didn't go anywhere, although Mr. Tattlebaum suggested that we not spend the money on any assessments of any kind and just see if the town would be open to selling the property. I don't know if Chris had told you that we had gone into the building?
Yes, yeah.
So you got that report, and we've had multiple, we've had one contractor and one person who's in the affordable housing field, and they've said that that building is worth roughly $1 million to $1.5 million. So, as we see it, it still stands as a town asset. As far as the Legionella is concerned, as you already know, there is technology out there that wasn't available in 2015 that could remediate the Legionnaires. But if the building were to be used for something like affordable housing, which is what we keep hearing over and over and over. We don't have enough housing, we haven't met the 10%, this is in the master plan. I mean, we keep hearing it over and over, yet so far, the only numbers I've heard is the 144 units that are going up on Reed Road. That's it. So there's a gap. There's a 30, I don't know if I could do the math that quickly, 39 unit gap there. We've been told that there can be anywhere from 10 to 15 units in that building. And when we looked further, as far as everybody knows that there's a need for senior housing, and there's also a need for housing for young people in this community, because we've priced them out of the market. I was told by a former superintendent at the vocational up in Southeastern that the average age of young people living at home now is 35. And it's because they can't afford to move out of their parents' house. So every community in cities all across the country keeps saying, oh, we're losing a valuable resource. We're letting our kids move away. Why would we do that if there's an opportunity here to provide them with some housing? Or a combination of both, senior and young people. Because now there's a lot of work being done with intergenerational. So it makes sense, it made sense to me that if this building could be made whole and we could have affordable units in there, then maybe we ought to seriously consider it. I'll get off the soapbox, so.
Any questions about where things stand at this mic?
I have a lot of questions and comments,
Yeah.
but I guess I'll start with, what is the request of us as a committee?
Well,
We do about this.
There isn't one, really.
There's nothing.
Well, there isn't yet.
Oh, okay.
Because it was suggested to us that we gain support, either in the form of a letter or a motion, at least to keep exploring this other avenue other than demolition.
Yeah, that's simple.
Okay. So is that something that you'd be looking for from us tonight, is some sort of,
If you're ready to do it tonight, of course we
or
would.
whatever, I'm just saying, like in
Yes.
general?
Yes, we would. We've met with planning. We're going to be meeting with the finance committee on Thursday. And I think there's one other committee, a housing authority. I've already gotten a commitment of support from the housing partnership.
And is the support, what is the support for?
Just the
Is
support is just
of a
a
request,
letter of support that,
requesting, like, in other words, we're supporting the Historic Commission's, what? The Historic Commission's request to the selectmen to delay something or to look into something? What's the?
well, it's hard, it's
How
kind
would
of
we
a
word it?
moving target because we haven't been made part of the solutions, if you want to look at it that way. So now and because the vote was tied 2-2, we now have to wait for their next meeting.
I guess what I'm trying to parse out is the request to support an action, or is it just in general to support historic preservation of the former school building? Police station, rather,
Police
sorry.
department.
Okay, as much as our interest is in it as a historic property, because you can see from the facade that it doesn't look anything like it used to look like, but the bottom line is the bones underneath and the facade that's left underneath, it's still an example of how the town progressed. So you know that DCTV was the town hall, and then they moved it into the building next door, which then became the police station, and then now we're here. So it still illustrates the history of the town, And in that way, it's worth saving. But more importantly, it's also worth saving because many of us on the commission are town meeting members and residents. And we think that if this building can be reused or repurposed, then so be it.
Oh, yeah, no, personally, I'm for historic preservation. I think, and honestly, as an affordable housing developer myself, I'm not afraid of environmental, especially if you can assess it and figure out how much you're dealing with, and you can, it's all about time and money. So if you can put it in the budget to remediate and it's containable, the only thing that scares me is groundwater, because that you don't know where that's gonna go. But if it's a containable thing, I feel like you can deal with it, as long as you can deal with it. The other thing, though, is, back to the time component of it, I think last time, was it Christine that was here? She had mentioned, though, that there was some sort of impending demolition gonna happen of this building. And I guess what I'm trying to figure out, too, is the timing of all that. To use a phrase, has the horse left the barn? Is it too late? Where are we in that process? And, you know what I mean, like, I'm all for historic preservation, and I'm all for affordable housing, that's what I do. But at the same time, I'm trying to balance that out with the reality of where we are and the process and everything, so.
Well, you know that this has been ongoing since 2015, so we're talking, almost 9 years. So I think I know one of the select board members said, what would the harm be in waiting yet another 2 years to just figure this out? And I believe that could, and I don't think it has to take 2 years. And I think we get around the whole issue of remediation and from what I understand, and I'm not a contractor, but if this building were to be reused, all of the plumbing and the HVAC, that would all be taken out. It would be like totally gutted. So the whole problem of Legionnaires is gone. It's gone the way it stands now. I mean, nobody's drinking out of any pipes from that building. And I don't believe the bacteria can continue to live in there. So it's sort of a non-issue if they're going to be removing plumbing and heating and ventilation systems to replace it.
Mike's question is in terms of the process, is the town in a position to proceed to demolish the building as it most recently has intended? Because I think they even contracted for the demolition.
But they lost, I think, and again, I'm not the person to ask, but as I understood it, the company that they got, they're not gonna be able to take advantage of them because I think they're gonna readjust the price. So
But
it's,
has the time period now expired that they can proceed to demolish the building if they wanted to, if they chose to?
they can't because because of the way the demolition delay bylaw is written, and that's where the historical commission comes in, the town has to provide, they have to be able to say whether or not the zoning, it fits into zoning, all of those issues, what the site's gonna look like afterwards. They haven't submitted any plans. So
When's the date, though? You had a 6-month stay of execution. When is that date up?
it's the middle of January. I wanna say maybe the 12th.
So, because historical can only hold it up for those 6 months.
That's right.
Yes,
They revert
unless.
back to what town meeting already voted on.
But, so maybe what we're asking is to continue to delay the demolition process. Maybe something simple as that.
Well, that would be through the selectmen.
Correct. But if you're willing to support that delay, that's what I guess I'd be asking for.
Extension, you mean, of the?
Yes.
Okay, John, I got several things.
Yeah, in my opinion, it doesn't matter where we are in the demolition process. The wrecking ball's not there. And as long as the wrecking ball's not sitting in the front parking lot, there's an opportunity to do something and change people's opinion if that's the intent. So, it doesn't matter what your regulations say, what the town bylaws say, there's a 6-month demolition, the town can reverse their decision. Now, the decision was made a number of years ago when the town funded the demolition of that building. Well, now, I've noticed, we've seen this grassroots efforts to make attempt to reverse that, and was that the right decision? And let's look at history, some recent history, the Southworth Library. A number of years ago, not too long ago, we had town administration and some select board supporting selling that facility. And there was no interest in the facility. Town meeting said, absolutely not. Well, we don't have anybody that absolutely not. We don't want to sell that building. And sure enough, you know, a couple of years later, an organization stepped up to the plate and look at that building now. You know, we've preserved an historic building, and we preserved an asset that almost got sold. So anytime, in my opinion, there's attempt to save a town asset, I think I can support that, and see where it goes. There's absolutely some big hurdles there. I don't think Legionnaire's disease is one of them. I think is, you know, no one's built an affordable house other than the 40Bs project in town for years. Government, housing authority hasn't. You know, I would love to see some affordable housing, but one of the biggest obstacles you have is zoning. I don't know if zoning would support that. But again, if we go back and if there's a change of heart from residents and grassroots efforts to try to save the building, it doesn't have to be housing, it could be a municipal use, which doesn't require any zoning. Municipal uses could go anywhere. I've seen over the years the town, you know, try to, you know, we've sold land. We just sold, you know, a number of years ago, some lots back over here, I can't think of the side street. And then a few years later, we were looking to put a parking lot down there, and we could have used those lots over there for parking lots. So too many times the town has sold assets for shop money, and then we go out and look for land or buildings to do something that's may not be known today, but we do know Dartmouth's growing. Government has not stopped growing. There's always seems to be a new department or a new expansion, and somebody needs some space. So I'm all in favor of at least looking at it. You know, what harm would that do to continue a delay if there's this grassroots efforts to try to do so? I admire that. When I see that in town, people, you know, voters in town, and trying to sway our leaders, I have to admire that and support it. You know? So I'd make a motion that we send a letter in support of the, is it the Historic Commission?
Yes.
And others to extend the demolition delay in order for people to do some further studies on the building and potential uses.
But last month's meeting,
First, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, now discussion.
all right, last month's meeting, when she showed up, we talked about this over and over again. And my thought was, it needed, if it was gonna be housing, it needed to come from the housing, it couldn't come from historical, correct? That she had to go back and get someone from the Housing Commission or somebody else to preserve that for housing. Remember that we were all over the charts with everything we're saying, something similar to what Sue's doing too. We're all over the charts with what we're gonna do and how we're gonna do it, who's gonna do it. Right now, this is just kind of a shotgun approach to try to save some, but there's no plan in place. Nobody from housing has come here and said, yes, we want to take this building and make it affordable housing. No one said that with a plan. We've had contractors go in there. We keep on talking about Legionella, but the 800-pound gorilla in the room is the asbestos. That's why everything stopped, because they found out the asbestos in the roof, asbestos in the second floor, the asbestos that's tied to the building that has to be remediated, and I think that's where the problem came in, the moisture that comes in. And I had this conversation with her last time. I lived in that building for over 20 years, and maybe in 2015 they could have done something. But when water pours in on that first floor into the vault, if you go in the vault and you look straight up, where it used to be a roof is blown apart. This is while we were in the building, so it's not a very building maintained. As far as the historical significance, the last time I saw that building that was actually with a 1925, I believe, structure up front was in 1986, before they converted that building. It was the old 55 edition and the 25 edition, or 28. I forget, my years are all. So that's the last time I actually saw the old thing. Once they put that wrapping around that building, anything historical is gone on that building.
It's not gone, it's actually encapsulated behind that, what they call IFAS. It's that stucco.
They took out the walkway, and there's old pictures of the entrance there. That's gone. There's nothing there.
Correct. But that's because it was utilized as a police station. I don't believe that entrance could have been secure the way it existed.
It was destroyed in 86. It was gone. It was taken apart.
So I just want to, in the interest of time, we're not going to do the study in this meeting, so I
Yeah,
think.
no,
that
I'm just saying,
you know,
I'm still waiting to have somebody from a housing thing to come through. I get what they're saying about the historical.
Yeah.
They hold the building in abeyance right now. They did the 6-month thing to hold it in place, to have somebody step up to the plate and say, from housing, and say, this would be a good building for this. I agree with John. If the town said, we're gonna keep it as municipal, I'm all in. They're not selling the property. They're gonna knock it down. They gotta keep the memorial. It's a World War I memorial. To get an antenna, you get the DCTV building right next to it. It's gonna be open space, parkland, recreation, whatever the case may be. They're not selling that property. They're just gonna get rid of all of the stuff that's sitting on it right now.
Yeah.
Just-
Joe, if I could just say on the housing front, so from the housing authority's perspective, we don't really do
Yeah,
development, you know what I mean?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
We're just
That
the
was
management of public housing, but the Partners in Housing, which is
Yeah.
sort of loosely affiliated with the housing
Yeah.
authority, that's something that they might have an interest in. I'm not on that board, but
Oh, and that was the thing you said last meeting
Oh,
also.
right, yes, I
That was
did
the
say
thing what we said. We gave that to Chris to say that something needs, like,
I think, right, I agree with, John is in the sense that I would support, the building's been like sitting there for a long time. It can sit there for a little bit longer. And when there's then is an intentional effort to kind of do a thorough investigation of the potential reuse value of the building. And that hasn't been done, but if there's motivation and interest to let's examine that, then I would support, then let's take the time to examine what that potential is.
And what they're looking for is to do an assessment
Yeah,
on the building. And to Joe's point, Legionnaires it is, asbestos, whatever, cracked foundations, water, anything, there's an engineering solution to every one of any problem in a building. It's cost,
yeah, and
right?
then,
An assessment would point that out,
Yeah.
to say, hey, the asbestos in there is cost prohibitive to do anything that we're building. That's what we need to know. We shouldn't be afraid
Yeah.
of asbestos and Legionnaires and all these
It's
other
gonna
things.
be expensive to get
It's-
rid of,
it's-
whether you
They
save the
did
building
an
or not. It's the
assessment,
same
I believe,
cost.
Back in 2015 or 16, they did an assessment of the building. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, they did. They did a feasibility study, and it was also approved. They also suggested that that building be continued use as a police station. They voted in favor of Scheme B. It was A, B, and C.
Okay?
And they voted in favor of Scheme B. I really strongly suggest, if you have any more questions about any of this, is to go and look at the reports on the DHC webpage. Because Ron DePippo, who is really Alternative Energy, came into the building with us, and I don't know if you heard his testimony, but when we went in there, he purposefully went to books that were on a shelf and checked the paper to see if the paper was damp. And we had gone in there after 3 straight days of rain, and there wasn't a damp piece of paper on that shelf.
okay, so we have, I think at this point, we have a motion before us. We've had discussion. Is there any more discussion on the motion? Okay, and then let's take a vote. All in support of a letter indicating our support for a delay in the demolition so that there can be a more thorough investigation into the potential.
Reuse of the building.
Potential reuse of the.
It doesn't have to
of
be
the
housing.
building. Yeah.
It could be, who knows who may step up.
All right, and that's our support letter from the CPC.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
I'm against it.
Okay, all in
We're gonna
favor?
vote.
Aye.
Okay. And opposed? And 2 opposed. Okay, so that passes 4-2. And I will draft that. Okay. Sandra, I see you're here to speak to the scenic greenway and the bike path. Yes, you could come up to the mic because you're on TV, if you didn't know that.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. I was here back in 2019 as a representative for the South Coast Bikeway Alliance at that time. I'm currently the president of the South Coast Bikeway Alliance and also a Dartmouth Pathways Committee member. Back in 2019, we applied for CPC funding to do initial studies for a scenic greenway in the north end of Dartmouth. Today, I'm back to ask for your further support in planning a multi-use path that features natural and recreational resources in North Dartmouth.
Excuse me, you should introduce yourself first, your name.
Oh, I skipped my name.
That's okay. That's all right.
My name is Sandra Medeiros. Thank you. I'm just going to read what I wrote. It'll be easier. Then you can ask questions. It'll flow better. The Dartmouth Pathways Committee, in conjunction with the South Coast Bikeway Alliance, is planning to create a multi-use path that features the natural and recreational resources in North Dartmouth. Along with similar efforts in New Bedford and Westport, it will be part of a regional, long-distance biking facility, the East Coast Greenway, which actually travels from Maine to Florida. Closing the Gap, a 2021 feasibility study completed by Serped, has analyzed the routes, documented civic engagement, and provided preliminary price estimates. We are now ready to leave concept design and will apply for a Mass Department of Conservation and Recreation Mass Trails grant for the amount of $160,000 to complete engineering studies which analyze permitting, identify owners and obstacles, and provide final cost estimates so that construction of the Dartmouth section can begin. We anticipate that further design and construction will be funded with public and private funds. The Mass Trails grant requires a local match of 20% project costs. We propose to use $25,000 of CPC funds to provide part of the match. The South Coast Bikeway Alliance will also contribute $15,000, money raised through private fundraising over the past decade. We believe this request fits well into the CPC category of recreation because of the multiple hiking, biking, picnicking areas it connects. We are prepared to complete the Community Preservation Committee short form project application for CPC funding if our project is deemed eligible. By connecting so many recreational and natural resources areas along a historic route, this project will be recognized by Mass Trails as a great investment.
Great, thank you.
We've been working on this, the South Coast Bikeway Alliance and the Dartmouth Pathways Committee, for well over a decade. You might be familiar with some of the South Coast Bikeway, the newly opened Mattapoisett Shining Tides section just opened last May. It's gorgeous. It's part of the proposed 50-mile South Coast Bikeway, which will connect Swansea to Wareham. The other communities are hard at work and applying for further studies and grant and design and build. Marion, I believe, is on the 2025 tip for building part of theirs. Wareham is in the tip schedule as well. Dartmouth, Westport, and New Bedford are working to close this gap between the Fall River border and the Fairhaven line. New Bedford has a lot of projects in the works. This path will begin at the terminus of the Quikasham River Rail Trail along the South Watuppa, over near LePage's and White's. And it will follow the rail line ideally, and then cross at Route 6, possibly at Sanford Road, and then head up Sanford Road, and then eventually come into Dartmouth at Old Fall River Road, and then connect to New Bedford. And this will provide not only recreational opportunity, but a possible commuter route for South Coast Rail. There are people that live on the other side of Route 140 that could easily bike a short distance to get to South Coast Rail. So it has a lot of positive aspects about it. It is part of the town master plan and the open space and recreation plan for the town of Dartmouth.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions, comments? Yeah, Mike?
I do have one question. So, with the benefit of looking at a map in front of me right now, is the pathway, it's not like a rail line, it follows the rail line, but is it a dedicated lane? Is that what it is?
I actually have some, in addition to the funding that we received from the three towns initially, just give you a little history, we came here and applied for $10,000 in CPC funds back in 2019. The town of Westport and the city of New Bedford also gave us $10,000, and then we added $5,000 of our own raising, and we hired Serped to do the initial study. They went back and got a Mass Trails grant using those funds as a matching fund, and did a $40,000 study to get more conclusive figures. And from there, we actually chose one of the 4 routes. There were 4 routing options, and we chose the northern route as the most feasible. Since then, since we have all the information, we received a $10,000 grant from Bay Coast Bank, and it allowed us to do some concept drawings. So we hired Good Landscape Design just recently. In fact, we actually have to tweak the product a little bit before we get the final documents, but I can show you them in rough form tonight, and you'll get an idea. Unfortunately, in Dartmouth, we still have an active rail, so our rail option was cost prohibitive. There was a discussion over the years with the rail companies, and there was no interest in working with us to further that option. The southernmost route, so that would connect to the Cove Walk in New Bedford and go up Rogers Street, Dartmouth Street, through Pagnera, and then eventually connect to Westport. And we do have some striping now on Chase Road, and then you'd go County Road and eventually get to Fall River. We've decided, along with the East Coast Greenway, to keep that as an complementary route. So we'll still have it on their map. It is on their map now, the East Coast Greenway map. That is a complementary route to them. But the primary route would be the northern route, as we call it, or the Scenic Greenway, north of 195 along Old Fall River Road.
So it's a painted bike lane.
It will be a separate lane. Our studies have proven that it is possible, the road width allow for a separate path. At sometimes it's
Could you bring me that
a
candy?
multi-use path with 2 directions, and other times they're on the opposite side of the road. So starting over here in Westport, you head east. Ignore this one up here. We're going on the Old Fall River route all the way to New Bedford. And what we did, we hired Good Landscape to give us some concept drawings. So they actually went out in the field and they used some of the dimensions that Serpent had given them, but they also did their own measurements. They took photographs, and then they produced concept drawings.
It links up with another path in New Bedford, is that what happens?
Yes, so this is behind the airport. airport. So then Tarpon Hill Road is being worked on right now for part of the transit-oriented development and South Coast Rail development, so it will all connect there. But New Bedford also has a lot of other options. There's north-south options, so you can go Church Street, which is the site of the rail, but you can also take Mount Pleasant Street. We can also, they have a working waterfront connector in the works. They just received a federal raise grant for that. So there's a lot of connectivity here.
That route in South Dartmouth, that follows the old bike path route from when I was a kid. I remember the signs being up there.
Yeah, that's not new.
You were that old, John, before the horse and buggy.
I didn't pay attention to signs, so I don't remember, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, it used to be I remember you used to watch the bike route, and I think at the end of Rogers Street, it said bike route ends. I think there's a sign down there, Rogers at the water.
Rogers does have new striping recently as part of a complete streets project.
Yeah, I don't think the signs are up yet, though.
Will this have signs? Will this path have signs?
Signage?
Signage?
Yeah, some of it does. We just had that discussion in our group. So when it's complete, we hope to have nice kiosks, maybe even an electronic component, but we've got to get it built first. Each community does have some signage, and there are South Coast Bikeway signs. You will see them in Fall River, as Fall River is mostly built out, so there are some there. There's some in Fairhaven on their path.
So we're the last cog, right, in this whole process? If I'm trying to remember from the meetings when Greg was here a couple of years back, I think we were the ones holding up. Are you waiting for the selectmen to approve, or town meetings to approve?
Well, we're trying to close that big gap between New Bedford and Fall River.
Which is us.
If we had a rail that was not active, like New Bedford, like Fairhaven and Mattapoisett and Marion, I wouldn't say it's easier or cheaper, but it would be more direct. But we don't have an inactive rail at this time, so these are kind of small, but I do have larger ones. And this will be a full 8-foot path with multi-directional. It's one of the errors that didn't get it done in time for today, but
Most of it was through North Park up there.
fortunately, they have them right, but they printed the wrong ones, just the Dartmouth ones.
Oh,
Which, you know, right? So
Making a
we
present.
kept these are the existing conditions at top. And then these are the
okay.
proposed conditions. And we kept the road width, the center line exactly the same, because that would keep the cost down initially.
Have you factored in the 4 feet now that they need to be between bicyclists and cars?
That's a wonderful law, but
Is it
it's
factored in,
not-
though? I mean, is it factored into the new pathways?
Well, we're getting off topic, but it's a vulnerable.
Vulnerable road users.
Road user law, yeah, it's a mouthful. You have to give vulnerable road users 4 feet to pass. So when you're able to, you go around them and stay within your lane. If you're not able to stay within your lane, but no one's coming at you, you are allowed to go into the opposite. So the driver is obligated to give us 4 feet of space.
The bicyclists now has to have flashing lights front and rear.
They do. You know your law, very good.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't, Joe, I didn't hear what you said.
Bicyclists now have to have flashing lights front and rear.
Oh, really?
Not necessarily flashing, but they have to have
Lights.
a
Lights.
white in the front
White
and red
right
in
to
the
the rear.
rear.
Oh, white in the front, red in the rear?
Yeah.
I hope he didn't lock any 12-year-olds up, Joe.
No, it's a big thing now. Used to be reflectors. It saves a lot of lives. It
Right.
makes sense.
I have about 20 in my truck. I hand them out when I see people.
Yeah.
So yeah, center line stayed the same. We put a multi-use 2-directional path where needed. These were the existing conditions. They actually took photos in the field, and then location.
And this design would be essentially the whole length of Old Fall River?
We found that it was doable.
Wow.
That you could actually have a protected path.
Well,
Yeah, the road's pretty wide
And
there.
what is that made of? What surface is that?
Just painted green.
It's
Just paint?
painted green.
Green paint?
Right,
Paint.
but, I mean, this is initial concept, so how much
Most of us
But
have
how
a
it
bike
evolves
path.
from here.
Yeah.
I think,
Is there
you know,
some
it's-
buffer? This looks like there's a buffer in between the
There is
cars.
a buffer, this one has, this should be 8 feet, so this is gonna change a little bit. It's just that the one they printed is wrong, but an 8-foot path, and then some buffer, and then, the 2 lanes, and buffer on the other side.
Great. Thank you. Well, you know, I think certainly eligible, you know, it continues this project that we originally kind of provided some initial planning money for. When I looked at this, at sort of one question, I think, you know, to be sure to it kind of addresses it, you mentioned, you know, this next phase is also kind of to, in addition to kind of the engineering and that kind of thing, also kind of the obstacles and, you know, owners. And so I think it'd be helpful in, you know, with the application to be clear about, you know, the kinds of obstacles, you know, because I think are there any deal killers? Are there any trail killer, you know, obstacles still out there? And you don't have to address that now, but I think that would be kind of one of the questions, you know, if this is, really needs, you know, say if you're gonna, no, you're not proposing this, but if you're gonna run across somebody's property and you need an easement and, you know, that would be one of those obstacles that if you didn't get the easement,
Couldn't do it.
can't do it. And so I think just being clear about what
Right.
those kind of obstacles, is there anything out there that could create a dead end for this trail?
Well, that's what these further engineering studies will determine. But the initial studies show that there's plenty
Yeah.
road width,
Yeah.
right of way, without,
I know that on the old Westport Road many years ago by UMass, this was a proposal that came through. They're actually
Yeah.
have a dedicated thing, and that went down in flames quickly. People were complaining about backing out, bicyclists coming by them, right by was from Westport, line up past UMass down here to Chase Road.
Yeah,
That was a few years, that was probably, well, I say a few, it was probably 20 years ago.
yeah, about 20, yeah,
I was gonna
that
say a
one I
few, yeah, it's
remember.
probably more than 20 years ago, but I do remember that was brought up then, and it was,
I think the sentiment has changed.
but
Yeah.
yeah, there
When
are
you
bike
look at
lanes.
what
it was an
is
interesting.
going on in surrounding communities and the positive impacts.
I think it's a
and
great
how
idea.
beautiful it is, it's just, I like
It
it.
is a great idea.
It's overdue in Dartmouth. We're
And then-
behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
And the 25,000 would be our short, you can still do the short form up to that amount.
Yes,
So,
yes, yes.
Good.
Yes, and we were proud to say that we did raise $15,000 with our Pedal for the Path, and also we rode this past fall for the Buzzards Bay Coalition Watershed Ride, and we sought matching funds for our organization, and we received $6,000 in matching funds. And we raised $21,850 for clean water. So we get ourselves out there and visible, and we help.
Is that route still behind the Parks and Trails, or is that plan gone?
This is the northernmost greenway.
Yeah.
That was the original project. At this point, it's not being addressed. We would like to do that, but this is a more direct route. That is on mostly town
All town,
protected.
yeah, it's North Park. I remember the,
And DNRT and conservation lands. So it is possible, but
it was all uplands too. There was actually a trail that was up there already, I think. I'm trying to remember back when you and Greg were here last time, which was, what, 4 years ago?
Yeah, something like that.
4 years ago, yeah, I don't know.
All right,
yeah, 2019.
great. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Look forward to getting a proposal.
All right, thanks again.
Did you want these?
Oh, yeah, you want
yes,
those, for
Even though
sure.
they're wrong.
Okay.
Something, as I get older, I become more of a bicyclist.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, when I was
Something
in
else.
Florida, I pedaled everywhere, on the paths.
But it's better when you
Thank
have that
you.
dedicated lane, you know?
Yeah, you need that nowadays.
Because I would like to, like, my, you know, even my.
So
kids
to
are
finish
teenagers.
off, item 7 in our agenda,
I like them yellow hands.
the Heritage Trail, I don't have any more update on the Heritage Trail. So I know that, I think we're waiting for the select board to choose a logo, to endorse the logo. Do you know if Oh, do you mind, you have to come up to the microphone, though.
Buddy, we got this from Andrew today.
Oh, okay.
Pass it.
Oh, look at that, hot off the presses.
Yeah, that was the same kiosk we
Got
saw.
the big
at
reveal?
Alamo.
That's great. We get to see this.
Yeah, kiosk up.
Yes, they
yeah.
approved in
So,
September.
Big reveal?
great, I didn't even think so, all right,
It's
update.
basically like the invoice. Oh, there's multiple copies.
Oh, look, I turned the page.
Wow.
I
I
turned,
didn't mean to be.
That's all right, settee.
I tried to avoid
this.
hoarding.
You were holding us in suspense.
Hold this suspended.
I thought it was a 5-pager.
But that's it.
Very nice.
You've been waiting all that long for that patch?
God, that's nice. Good job.
I expected big things.
That is a nice
My
patch.
glasses.
Got all the
It's got all the accoutrements.
relevant
so,
things there.
Sandra's gonna give us an update on the Heritage Trail. Yes.
Yes, sure. Most of it is
cost?
here on this handout, but for the audience at home, Andy Langhauser led this project. He wanted to complete the Dartmouth Heritage Trail, and he has successfully engaged the Greater New Bedford Regional Technical High School students to construct 2 kiosks, one for the Westport Factory Lincoln Park location and one for the Pascomanskett Park location. Both have been created and installed. He shows some invoices were submitted, $78 for cement and sono tubes and $204 for a police detail for the Westport Factory Lincoln Park installation. The storyboards were produced and printed and should be installed no later than the week of December 18th. They're shown here. And the final cost is $1,200, which has not been invoiced yet. We did get a logo designed by UMass Dartmouth students, and it was approved by the select board, and the next step is to figure out who would produce them and where we would install them. And the only thing he did leave off here that is also an element is the bicycle route. So it's not a physical route as with striping and things like that. But it will be a signed route with these signs. And we'll also have it electronically available and in paper form, I believe you requested. So we were thinking of having the paper form available at the library and on the kiosk.
Good.
And so it would be a 30 to 33 mile route in its entirety, and it will change according, along with the changes in our bicycle infrastructure. So if we happen to have better infrastructure, we'll modify the trail to accommodate that. And we'll try to take the lowest traffic, quietest roads. That's how the route's been designed at this point.
Great, thank you. Any questions?
No, it's great.
Excellent, thank you, a trooper.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Thank you to Andy Langhauser, because
Yeah.
he came on board and he said, why isn't this done? And
And
he's
he's,
getting
yeah,
it done.
Really
really,
nice.
really
Really
appreciate it.
nice.
He's-
Is it gonna be like a decal, or is it actually gonna print something out? The logo?
You're looking to get a sticker for your car?
No, I don't wanna stick it for my car, I'm just trying to. if I
These
can-
are signs that would go on posts.
Pat, you should have your people reach out to Tim Barber or,
We've spoken with him.
because Tom gets it through his companies that, through the state bid, that you can probably have this stuff made. It's part of the town.
I think Andy has already done that. In fact, we reached out to Tim Barber for the vulnerable road user signs, and we recommended that they purchase or order 60 signs for our community. But we also don't want too many signs, so we're
Don't pay
going
attention.
Great,
Oh, very good.
all right, thank
you
you.
again.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. The logo, I don't need a sticker, but I like the logo.
On the
It's a good
Russell
way to
Mills
promote it.
Russell Mills Land Conservation project is where the conservation restriction's been held up by the state. I'm happy to report that Brian Cruz from Anthony Salvestano's office has had several conversations, or a few conversations with the state and has been able to reach agreement that the conservation restriction can go forward as is, with the acknowledgement that future land acquisition projects would have to be structured differently. And it essentially, the issue with the state's interpretation is that the town must hold the property interest. So in the structures in which the funding of the conservation restriction, but the restriction itself is held by, say, Buzzards Bay Coalition, or held by DNRT, or that, my understanding from Brian is the state is, no, that the town has to hold that restriction. We'll talk more about that. I think this may be important just to touch base on, I may go to the Conservation Commission, just perhaps at a future meeting, just to make sure it's understood what their role is. And this hasn't always been expected of them. But if we were, if a DNRT or some private entity does want to continue to acquire land and preserve it, it's, my understanding is it's going to need the participation of Conservation Commission. And so I think we need to touch base with the commission, and so that they understand why it's important for them to have a role in these, which they haven't necessarily had a role in the past. When a town acquires the land, there's other mechanisms for, I think, putting it into, conservation land and that sort of thing. But it's the third party, the non-government entity that is acquiring the land. We have to, the property, real property interest is the restriction, and so the town has to have it. That's a layperson's summary of it. But I think.
Let me ask a question,
yeah.
because I'm a little confused. So the town has to keep the restriction, or the town has to keep the land?
The restriction.
Okay, so I
In
thought.
these cases, in that event, the town, the real property interest is the town purchases the
Purchase
restriction,
Okay, yep, okay.
and then holds the
Holds it,
restriction
okay.
on the land. I think, Brian did a good job of convincing the state that this could not all be rewound. This had to go forward as is, with the understanding we will do it differently in the future. But, past administrations, this is not, these deals, this is not unusual in Dartmouth. These deals have gone through, but
Okay.
advised they won't in the future, and I think Brian's been clear, we understand that, but this one can't be rewound. So that's good. So I've got to be in touch with make sure DNRT is aware, because this will allow them to kind of close on that, and then we can release the remaining funds that they have once the restriction is recorded. So that's good. Okay, so let's circle back now to item 4, which is, having heard comment, revisions to our plan for fiscal '25. And it sounds like one revision is making, including just a specific reference to seeking the recommendation of the Agricultural Commission. I think Sue was saying, I was thinking the trust, but it's the commission. And just looking at a place where that might go. And so maybe what we do is we have in our list of strategies, for open space, we have support preservation of agricultural land. We do already have encourage and support land preservation projects that incorporate multiple CPA eligible uses, such as historic preservation and community housing. So I'm wondering if it, if maybe a way to go here would be, and then in terms of our priority, we have preserve agricultural land that is deemed to be viable as an agricultural business. Should we just add it as part of kind of our priorities and seek recommendation? Or is the strategy that we would seek recommendation of the Agricultural Commission in?
Our
Under the
opinion?
goals section, you mean? Like, I'm looking at right now.
I don't have the thing out. in front
Yeah,
of me.
yeah, if you look, so the goals,
So we have like
yeah, look at past the goals section, we have current priorities.
objectives to protect, preserve, conserve their scenic forest land, farmland, historic and cultural assets of the town. But that's under the goal of protecting the scenic qualities of the rural character of the town. So
Yeah.
I guess, is the goal to protect the, I'm looking at you, so, is the goal to protect the soils of the land? Or is it to protect the scenery of the site? You know what I mean? Or is it a combination of both?
It can be both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
From an agricultural standpoint, I'm wondering, is it the soils or is it, if you had a proposal for, like, again, farming or some sort of use?
think about Horse Neck Road,
Yeah,
where DNRT has Slocum River Reserve. That's both. That's both
right, scenic and
scenic and.
soil.
Yep.
It is, it's
Right.
beautiful.
Are we writing this for in anticipation? Because it seems to me we've got all of this already inside of
It's just a matter of.
four corners. We already have all of this, it's kind of scattered, so,
Yeah.
like, everything they talked about is, like, I agree with John, it's something that we would do anyways. We'd kind of look at it and, all right, we did the scenic side, okay, that's good, cut the field, the house, yep, keep the house, farm the land. We've already done this, I think, in different things. I mean, again, I go back to Dykes Brook there. I think we hit upon all of the things. We kept the scenery. They were still gonna farm there. I think was it grapes? They were doing something there, and then they had the house itself.
Yes, grapes,
That
yes.
was there. So, I mean, I think we've done all of these things. I think it's within the four corners of what we do now. So I'm not sure what we're trying to, I don't know if we're trying to reinvent.
Well, that's the question.
Reinvent the
Is
wheel?
there-
I mean-
Well, no, but I
What if you
think
had a
that,
piece of land, I'm just
Right.
spitting out this, I had top of my head. What if you had a piece of land that did not have any scenic value to it? It was literally like up on Old Fall River Road, and it didn't really have any, like, the beauty of.
Very little
the
frontage.
Slocum, very little, right, but it had great soils, and you could grow all kinds of great, products there, like whatever it be, vegetables or something. And someone came along and they wanted to start their own little farm, and they were looking for us to help them in some capacity, whether it be to acquire it or whatever. Is that already covered in our goals and objectives?
Yeah, it's covered in that. It's, if somebody wants to come in, if it's a farm that's there now, they want to keep it going as a farm, want to protect it, right? Schofield, right? We'll go back to Schofield. That was a farm that somebody came up and wanted to protect and continue to farm, and we did it. But it goes through the state or the federal farm bureau, whatever it is, remember?
That particular farm that has a Farm Bureau restriction on it.
Farm bureau restriction, and that would have, and any of these farmlands that we were to preserve would also have some type of a state or federal thing, yeah, so I think, yeah, so I think we've, yeah, I mean, again, wasn't sure, it was almost like like you guys had something in mind, and it was kind of like a crazy setup, you're trying to, because you were touching upon all the things that I thought that we do already.
Yeah, so the question here is just if there's any language we want to amend or anything we feel like we need to amend in our plan in terms
The
of.
needs assessment.
Matt,
Yes,
what
that's
email,
right.
So,
where are you
and,
finding that
you know,
email that
there's
has a
nothing-
copy of this?
I'd like to put a statement
It's
somewhere.
from
that-
Michelle.
Well, you just need one conversation.
11:15. Yeah,
I'm trying to find the document.
yeah.
John, you were saying?
Somewhere where it's appropriate in the needs assessment, just a statement that we would seek input from the Ag Commission when it comes to
Yeah.
That's the only part that's
any
probably-
farming
Yeah,
proposals.
probably, yeah, that's probably
You
the
know,
thing that's missing.
I'd want to stay away from recommendations.
Right.
Someone might interpret that in the future, well, it's a positive recommendation, so we have to oblige by it. No, so rather than
They would come in.
have that
we-
possibility, we seek input
Yeah.
from the Ag Commission.
We could add that in our list of strategies.
Yes.
Current priorities, number 2, agriculture. A, preserve agricultural land that is deemed to be viable as an agricultural business. And
Yeah.
then we can say with input or whatever from,
Yeah, but they input anyways though, right? I think we've always had something with the farms. I think we've always had
Yeah,
some
so,
sort of input.
No, but I think
We
it's
wanna be
important
deliberate
to-
about it.
you know,
Yeah, okay, I mean, that's
to-
fine. I mean, it's
To list
again-
it, you know,
The only difference comes into play when DNRT is taking the lead in terms of the protection of the property.
Yeah.
And they have the option of either,
Gotcha, okay.
you know, they.
I follow it now. Now I see where
So
you're
if
coming from.
They want, so we'll look to approve the language in the CR, but they don't have to.
You just want to be part of the game.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right, I follow now.
Okay.
Now I follow the logic.
so as
Now I
a
follow.
strategy,
Yeah.
following John's lead, we could put another bullet which says seek input from the Agricultural Commission for projects that preserve agricultural land. So they could also include conservation kind of projects that include agricultural.
Because if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken, Susan, a lot of it depends on the acreage too, how much acreage. Like you mentioned the Farm Bureau.
Right,
Well,
and
the
the
farm-
reason that we opted to go with Farm Bureau was because it was too small of a
Right.
resource for the state to get involved with, so.
But normally, wouldn't it go to the state?
Yeah.
We prefer that it go to the state,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. In terms of other input, I did not hear anything other kind of specific to additions or
No, me.
revisions to our current kind of goals, priorities. And we lift our goals from the town's planning documents, but our list of priorities and strategies. Okay. So, shall we approve then our needs assessment and plan? And what I will do is I will take the town, if you go, section 2 is funding availability, I will update those figures. Now that we have a projected revenue, from the state, which would be 21% match, I'll go back
Change.
and change the figures, so we're kind of a little bit closer on these numbers in terms of what we project fund balances to be on July 1st, 2024. So I will update those.
Buddy, can I just ask a
Yes.
quick dumb question? On the section 1 funding priorities chart that we have in the beginning, it says acquire, create, preserve, and support.
Yeah.
And then it has all the different categories. What is the difference, what does support mean? Because I noticed 3 out of 4 of them say no.
Yeah, so support, and it really only ends up, where does it end up in terms of support? It really only ends up with housing. And that was done to enable CPA funds to be used for existing public housing. So, and as well as programs like the rehab loan program is a support program. So it's direct support to income eligible people. So you could do a rental assistance program with CPA funds. So that support category kind of opened up these other opportunities that really are only relevant to housing.
Okay, all right, I was just wondering, because I didn't see it, I didn't know if it just meant, yes, we support you. whatever.
Yeah, no, it kind of opened up, and all these other kinds of things that you could do related to affordable housing, like rent subsidies, repairs that prevent housing, public housing from kind of falling out of, being taken offline, things like that.
All right, thank you.
Great, and so the other thing that will be updated is our next piece of this plan after is we will set our schedule for funding, so that will be updated. And then we have our application process. So I think with the updates to the money and the updates to our schedule and the revision is adding the one additional bullet point to community preservation strategies under the open space recreation section, which is to seek input from the Agricultural Commission for projects that include agricultural land preservation. So when Margaret comes back, I'll ask for a motion to amend our needs assessment plan accordingly and approve it as our fiscal 2025 needs assessment and plan. The other thing I can say is I don't have an update on the archaeological survey, and there's no further update for CPC webpage, so just table those two items for future.
Okay, the next one, the next meeting's gonna be the 9th, right, January 9th? Second Tuesday?
Yeah, I've asked Chris to come to our January meeting and give us kind of our annual report on the housing trust money, that CPA money in the housing trust, and the activity of the home loan program and the home buyer program for calendar year 23, which is something that we've gotten the last couple of years. And so I showed him what Cody Haddad had given us last January. I also asked, since we're talking about the housing production plan.
Just on the 9th, just so you know, I'm unable to attend.
Okay.
On the 9th, just a
Okay.
heads up.
All right. I also asked Cody to, he wants to talk about the housing production plan, is this something that we might be able to fund? And so my initial, it's $25,000, is what he estimates. My initial response to him today was, I did not believe our administrative budget this year could afford a $25,000 commitment. But I would get some more information from Donna Fernandez and, kind of get squared away with what the status of our administrative budget is, which is $35,000, but we've had legal costs and, we have existing expenses. And so I have to kind of get a little more information about that, whether we could support that or not from administrative funds. But in doing so, I said, we've been trying to really talk more about housing and ways to encourage or hopefully find out, how to get more housing proposals. So since we're going to the town's going to update its production plan, I went back to the current plan, and I sent the table of recommendations for the current plan and asked Chris if he could take the time to go through and just update us on the 17 recommendations. Did they get implemented? Did they produce any units? And so he will do that and give us kind of a report on, for the last 5 years. 5 years ago, we had 17 recommendations, on our production plan, and these are the ones we implemented and that sort of thing. Because I said we were interested in having input as a committee to the next production plan. So I think he's good with that. So Margaret, we're going to take up a motion to approve our 2025 needs assessment plan with the one addition of that bullet point to consult with the Ag Commission, and then my updating of our financial figures and our funding schedule, those dates. So we have so we do a motion to that effect?
Motion.
All right, and a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All right, any further discussion?
I can give you a quick update about the archaeological reconnaissance.
Okay,
Let's
not right now,
finish
but
Okay.
hold that, and it, okay, hold that, because we're gonna take a vote. Okay, vote on the plan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Okay. So we need to approve our funding schedule for fiscal '25. And the dates that are very typical to getting our proposals about 2 weeks ahead of time, so we have a chance to look at them, review them, go to town meeting. So for the June funding round, and then we also put out there the last day to get requests for consultation so that we're able to take those up at our next meeting that's still before the deadline for proposals, so it's useful for folks. So that was that would have been December 6th of 2023, so that we can give people feedback at this meeting, which we did. But proposals would be due January 24th. We would review them at our February meeting. At our March meeting, which would be March 12th, we'd be prepared to make our recommendations. And town meeting is June 4th. For the October funding round, May 1st would be the last day to get eligibility consultations, with the promise that we would give response before the application deadline. June 26th would be when proposals would be due for the October round. August 13th, we would review them in July, and August 13th meeting is when we would make recommendations. And October 15th would be the town meeting that would, where we'd seek approval of the funding. So folks are fine with that schedule. If we have a motion to approve this funding schedule for fiscal '25.
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, any questions? That kind of keeps the time frame very similar to what we've been working with. All right, all in favor? Aye. Okay, any opposed? No, that's unanimous, so this will be included. There. Okay, so one thing that I forgot to mention in correspondence is, but when I saw Fred, I was reminded, Mr. Dabney had reached out to me asking if it was possible for the Agricultural Commission to have a representative on the CPC. So I looked up kind of what the Department of Revenue's guidebook on the CPA. And our membership is anywhere from 5 to 9, so it is capped at 9 by the legislation. There are 5 designated representatives, like the Housing Authority. Many of you are here as those representatives. Parks and Recreation, Planning, and then we have 4 at-large members. That membership was established when Dartmouth created a bylaw to adopt the CPA back in 2002. So the membership of our committee is actually in a bylaw that the town adopted. So my response to Fred was it didn't look practical to change the composition of the committee to have a designated ag commission rep. Because we can't add a position, we'd have to swap an at-large member position for ag commission, and then that would also have to be done as a bylaw change that goes to town meeting. So I said, from a practical point of view, that's probably not, it's kind of a lot of effort and whether or not that would go through or not. But I did say, one, if we do have a turnover any time in an at-large member, we probably, we can remember to reach out and just sort of give a heads up to the Ag Commission, because there may be someone who would want to
I think that's
pursue
the
it.
best way to do it.
That's a great idea.
And
No,
then
that's what I was gonna suggest.
we can endorse it and say, we really would like someone who has that experience.
Because there has been times where we haven't had anybody.
No.
You've had an empty
Yeah.
seat for, a number of months because there was no interest and, the appointing authority wasn't appointing anybody. Wasn't making it
yeah.
a priority.
Yeah, exactly.
So we would just have to push it along and
Yeah.
ask them to make it a priority. Here's a name
Yeah,
that we can support.
yeah,
Who were the at-large members? You, me, John, and Jim Conlon?
yeah.
I always thought there were three, but that makes.
Yeah, no, it's 4. And then the other thing I said
Balances the board.
we could do is just make the effort to meet at least once a year with the Ag Commission.
That's a good idea.
To, to just
That's a good
be on the
idea.
same page and
Yeah.
understand the issues
Yeah.
and that sort of thing.
Be
So,
sure to invite them to the needs assessment meetings.
Yeah, so totally escaped me in correspondence, but that was kind of an important exchange we had this past few days. So I apologize for that, for getting that in the beginning of our meeting. So, so I think they definitely would be open to meeting with us at least once a year, so.
I think any of those specialty groups that are out there would want to meet, we
Yeah.
could designate a meeting,
Yeah.
whatever month.
Yeah.
That's the month that they
Right.
show up.
Yeah.
Do them all at the same time, because maybe there's overlapping interests.
Yeah, yeah. So, Sue, is it really short? Because I know we're over our time.
It's really.
Okay, all right, if you
Want me to
may
do
come
that?
to the
Yeah.
mic and give an update on the archaeological reconnaissance survey.
The senior archaeologist from PAL, the Public Archaeology Lab, sorry, had invited any of the historical commission members to go out with her because she wanted to verify a couple of things that turned up on the new LiDAR, which I don't know how many of you are familiar, but it brings out certain features in the landscape that you don't ordinarily get to see. And so Chris and I volunteered to go out, and we found a mill out, she found a mill out in the Wernick Farm, which is a DNRT property off Collins Corner Road, next to Ridge Hill. And she also found another feature that she's not exactly sure what it is, but she suspects that it's in the area behind the playing fields, but towards the back of where the fields are for the Quinn School. But she was trying to figure out whether or not it was town-owned land. And we couldn't verify it, so we didn't get to go out, but she is gonna go out there and try and find what it is that she was seeing on the LiDAR. And she's in the process of completing the survey, and she had said last week that it would be at least another 3 or 4 weeks, I think, before it's complete.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Great, thank you very much, and I appreciate your brevity on that, too. Great. We meet next January 9th, right? Okay. And until then, happy holidays to everyone.
Be healthy.
Yeah, and a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Should we discuss that? I don't think so.
Let's just say
All
aye.
in favor? That one is unanimous.